Thank you. Let me just 1 second. Okay, thank you everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night Zoom shiur. We are studying tonight Parashat Vayera, and which means that Hashem came and appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu. I would like to dedicate tonight's shiur, a special dedication L'Oloi Nishmat, L'Oloi Nishmat L'Oloi Nishmat Rivka Bat Shaina. And also special, we have Yortzeit tonight of Avram Framovich. Avram Framovich is a grandfather of our dear friend Carmela Chapman. And his Yortzeit is tonight, the 2nd of Shvat. So we want to Ruach Hashem Tenichena Magan Eden, V'tei Nishmatot Tzura B'Tzura Chaim. And this shiur will be L'Oloi Nishmat for him as well, and for all those we usually mention. And I want to wish long life to our dear friend Carmela Chapman. Same note, I want to wish her refuah shlema for all the sick people around Israel, and also befrat Gavela Naomi Bat Lea Malka, refuah shlema Elisheva Bat Sheva Bat Rivka, Tikva Ujnim Bat Rosette, and Claudine Bat Chana Ruchama Kelna, Refana Lehem, refuat Nefesh, refuat Aguf, refuat Krova Lavo. Okay. So tonight's shiur. So tonight, actually, his Yortzeit, also the Yortzeit of, does anyone know? Famous tzaddik tonight's Yortzeit. Gilad said something? No. Tonight's also the Yortzeit of Rav Zusha Ma'anipoli, Rav Meshulam Zusha. So if we have time in the end, we're going to say some stories of Rav Zusha. And also Motzei Shabbat is also, and Gilad smiling because it's the Hilul of Baba Sali Motzei Shabbat. So if we have time, we're going to do some stories at the end. So I always get excited Parashat Vayera. So many things to speak about, and I don't know what to speak about. And how to choose was the difficult part of preparing the shiur tonight. But I hope you're going to enjoy what we come up with, and then we'll do some stories. So maybe we're going to start with the parasha. If you have a chumash with you, just look at the psukim. Perek Zayin, let's do Perek Zayin, okay? Hashem said to Moshe, go to Paro, you and your brother, and tell him what I tell you. I'll make his heart strong. He's not going to listen to you. 1 second, wrong part. Yeah. Sorry, correct. Yeah. Okay, sorry. The end of Perek Zayin. After the first plague of blood came the second plague of, what was the second plague? Can't hear you? Speak up, please.
It's all there.
What was the second plague?
It's all there.
What's it Tzfardea?
What do you mean?
What's it Tzfardea? What's the plague of Tzfardea?
מה שהצפרדעים עלו מהמים.
Yeah, but what is it? What is the plague?
מה שהכל היה מלא צפרדעים. מה זאת אומרת?
Well, no. What's it Tzfardea in English?
What, frogs?
Frogs. Okay, so very good. So who told you it says frogs? See, that's what they teach us in school, that it's a frog. Tzfardea is a frog. However, there's different Rishonim have different opinion. And you see that Ibn Ezra, he calls it Tzfardea. You ready for this? Crocodile. That's what it said. Tzfardim is crocodile. Now, if you have crocodile plagues, it's a little bit more scary than frogs. Okay, frogs, maybe you can do it. But when it comes to crocodiles, so that's one opinion. But the basic opinion is frogs. Now,
אבל כתוב תנין כשאהרון זרק את המקל. אז איך זה, איך?
So what's the question?
So why the Torah would use two different terms for the same for the
The
same
same way.
object.
Okay, so there are different kinds of species, of also in crocodiles. So it could be there are two different types. I don't know, but that's just one opinion of the Ibn Ezra. It says that. It says that in on this parasha. Okay, so wait, I want to continue with the parasha. They're all trying to find water to drink. One second. Let me see. Okay. Sorry. And the pasuk Perek Zayin, pasuk Chava. Start again. Okay. V'yomar Hashem el Moshe. God says to Moshe, go to Paro and tell him, this is what I'm going to do. Send my people out. Shlach et ami v'yavduni. V'im ma'en ata leshalech. Hine anochi nogef et kol gevulecha b'tzfardim. I'm going to send again in all your borders frogs, or according to the Ebenezer, crocodiles. These animals which came out from the Yor. V'shirat ha'yor tzfardim. They all came out from the Yor, from the river Nile. Ubal betecha ubachadar mishkavecha v'al mitatecha, and they came into your house. This is how it's telling Paro, the frogs, into your bedrooms, onto your bed. Ubebet avadecha uba'amecha ubetanurecha. They're going to come into your rooms, ubetanurecha, and into your ovens. Ubemisharatecha, into your dough, into your baked dough. They're going to come into you. So this is what he tells Paro. Now Paro is not even scared. He doesn't even get one bit scared of him. He doesn't do anything. He tells his people, listen, we have everything under control. Don't worry. We know the frogs are coming. We've got frog experts. We're sending out leaflets, sending out precautions. This is regulations, how we're going to do. And that's Paro, because only he's caring about himself. Paro didn't care about his people. Now, what I want to talk about more about Paro is I want to talk about the frogs. That's been my big interest for tonight. And I want to start off with maybe the Gemara. Yeah. Todus. Did anyone have of Todus? Someone was called Todus Ishromi. The Gemara says in Psachim. The Gemara says in Psachim, there was a person called Todus. He was a Roman man. And he taught his people of Rome, on El Pesach, they would eat these gedim. Gedi is a goat. Thank you. A goat. Okay, Gedi is a goat. He would also eat a goat of symbolic of the Leil Seder. And they said to him, listen, if you are an important man, we would kill you. That's what we would put you in Cherem. And the Gemara says, why was he an important person? Not because he taught the Romans to have a goat on Leil Seder, but because he used to find a Talmid Chacham, and he used to make business with the Talmid Chacham. And because he made Talmid Chacham, he said he used to matil mala'ei lakis Talmidei Chachamim, v'zochev yoshev b'yeshiva shel mala. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Whoever helps Talmid Chacham with his money, he will be able to sit in the yeshiva shel mala, shenemar ki betzel ha'chokhmah betzel ha'kesef, which means in the shadow of chokhmah, of knowledge, is also in the shadow of money, because he supported the Talmid Chacham. This is what he used to do, Todus. Now, the Gemara says later, and he tells a story about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Who was Mishael and Hananiah? And I see Gilad is nodding. Maybe you want to tell us a story.
Oh, there is this famous story with the golem that...
Of Nebuchadnezzar. What was the story of Nebuchadnezzar? He made a pesach.
Yeah.
And he told them to bow down to the idol, his idol. And they said to themselves, listen, we're not bowing down to any idol. He says, listen, you're bowing down. He said, we're not. He said, you're not bowing down, we're going to put you in the fire. And then they said to themselves, okay, fire, that's scary. And then they did a Kal V'chomer. What's Kal V'chomer? Asu Kal V'chomer ba'atzman mitzfardeim. They saw the frogs in Mitzrayim. Ma tzfardeim? שהם מצווים לקדושת השם, כתיב ובאו ובאו עליו בביתך ובתנוריך ומשערתך. We just read that pasuk. The frogs, where did they go? They went into your houses, into your bedrooms, and they went into your ovens. It doesn't even say they went into the kitchens. It said they went straight into the ovens, the frogs. Now, a frog, I'm saying, you're used to living in water, and it's nice and cold, it's wet. And then you get into the, it's not like a sauna, the frog doesn't go regularly to the sauna. And he's going into the oven, it's hot, it's dry, it gets burnt, he dies. So why would you want to do that? The only purpose for him to doing that is for Kiddush Hashem. Now, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were Nevi'im at the time of Nebuchadnezzar, at the time of Daniel, in Sefer Daniel, and they said to themselves, listen, if the frogs went in, and the frogs don't have a commandment of Kiddush Hashem, and we have a commandment of Kiddush Hashem, so Kal V'chomer, we should go in. And they said, okay, we'll go in the fire. So Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, I'm going to put you in. He puts them into the fire. And what happens? Yeah,
and they were saved.
They were saved. They walk around, and this is like relaxing in the fire.
Yeah, so Nebuchadnezzar saw like another dmut, like basically
image.
Yeah, image, walking them out. Yeah. And
that's when out. So that's the story, what the Gemara says. Now, what's relevant to us? And so I want to bring your attention. So it says the Rambam. Well, that's clear, it says it into our pasuk. Let's just see the rest of the pasuk. I'm going to just continue. After the show of the frogs, see what happened to the frogs? The frogs weren't safe. The frogs actually got burnt up. Go on. The frogs got burnt up, and they didn't get saved in the fire. And when Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, they went in, they didn't think that we're going to be saved. They thought, listen, this is the right thing to do. The frogs went in, they got burnt, and we'll go up and we'll also be burnt. But that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. We're going to do it L'Shem Shamayim. And when they saw that sacrifice, that they were willing to give up and to die for that, and then that's how they got saved. But the pasuk says later on, I can't find it now, that all of the frogs of Mitzrayim, they all died and they all got taken away. But they all got, they all died, and the only ones that were allowed to live back afterwards was the ones which put themselves into the ovens. Can't find this now. Okay, so that was their reward that they got. They actually came back to life afterwards. The frogs which were in the ovens. So now I want to bring your attention to now. Rambam says in Hilchot Yisodei Torah, there's a mitzvah. Some things are a mitzvah to give up your life for, and some things is not a mitzvah to give up your life for. Okay, which means that if you're in life in danger, and the doctor says, "Listen, you need to eat this McDonald's cheeseburger. It's pure bacon." So what do? You go, you do netilat yadayim, and you eat it. You don't give up your life for that. But there are mitzvot which is yareg v'al yavor. What is those? Kol mi shene'emar bo yavor v'al yareg. That is avodah zara, shfichut damim, and gilui harot. What's the three cardinal sins? Is not to kill, immorality, and idolatry.
When you say arayot, it's what exactly? Because arayot, it's it can be interpreted in different ways, right?
Yeah. I don't know what you're meaning to. There is a machloket between the Ramban and the Rambam of Israel, the arayot. Of Israel.
One way to look at it, say arayot is anything that is not a permitted marital relationship. Yes,
that is unanimous. Yeah. The question is if there's more than that. So according to the Ramban, I saw Bodan also in the Shach and Shulchan Aruch of that, not even marital relations, but even touching an erva, which is not mutar. There's also called Gilui Harot, and it's also Yarog V'al Yavor. Machloket between Ramban, and the Shach brings it in Hilchot Nida. So it's very strict, but even according to some opinions, even to look at erva for the enjoyment of for the person of a German, which is not allowed, forbidden, even though it would be called of Israel the Gilui Harot, which is not really Gilui Harot, but it's asur on that level. And according to the Ramban, I can't remember which way around it is. I think it's the Ramban which says it's the Harig Bal Yavo. But going back to our topic, says the Rambam, the mitzvot which you have to yavor velo yareg. If he gets killed, he says, "Listen, I'm not eating this hamburger. I've never eaten ham in my life. I'm not eating this McDonald's. Even if the doctor says I'm gonna die, I'd rather die." Yeah. Says the Rambam, mitchayev be'nafsho, that which means he's liable for his own life. That means even if it's Yom Kippur and he's supposed to, the doctor says eat it, you have to eat it. There's no option of not eating anything. Now says the Rambam, says you're obligated for it. But the opposite is also true. If you have a commandment to give up your life and not to be, and not to do idolatry or immorality, or what was the third one?
Spilling blood.
Spilling blood. Thank you. Then you have to give up your life. And if you give up your life for that, then he's done the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. And he says, Kiddush Hashem is the greatest mitzvah that you can do. And he says the Rambam, that if there was 10 Jewish people around you, what's Kiddush Hashem? Kiddush Hashem is not just to the Goyim. Kiddush Hashem is to the Jews. If you Jew see another Jew acting righteously and doing the right way, then you think, wow, look what he's done in the name of God. I'm also going to be like that.
But that's about what Rambam says. It's not. It applies even if you are alone. It doesn't apply only if you have.
So now we're going to talk about if you're alone or not alone. So far we said if you're talking about alone. If you're alone and you're in a hospital in your own room with 2 or 3 people and the doctor says eat this ham, you eat it. But if it's a public display and there's 10 Jewish people there, then it's Kiddush Hashem not to do any sort of other Torah. And anything barabim, if literally. And then the Rambam gives an example. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Bezariah, Rabbi Akiva, Vechaverav. Vehen Harugei Malchut, the 10 Harugei Malchut of Rabbi Akiva and his generation.
But in their case it was clear, right?
One second, Gilad. One second, I'm going to take your question. Ve'eluhen Harugei Malchut, she'en ma'ala al ma'alatan ve'alehen. There's no greater level than them, that they give up their life for Kiddush Hashem. נאמר כי עליך הרגנו כל היום, נחשבנו כצאן לטבך, ועליהם נאמר אספו לי חסידי, כורתי בריתי עלי זבח. Come to me those who are my righteous, and those who sign a covenant with me. That's the greatest level from our Kadosh Baruch Hu. So let me just explain this point and we'll take your last question. If you're in a public display, then any avera, anything which tells you, if it tells you take off your kippah and step on it, it's not avera. So if it's private, step on it. But if it's a public display, and then you said you're not allowed to do that. We'll just take Gilad's question now.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's.
Oh, but no, please. Yeah. What did you want to say?
No. I just said that in the case of Rabbi Akiva, and it was obviously, even if they were by themselves, they were obliged to, right?
To give up their lives.
Yeah. Because it's avodah zarah, right? It's a.
Okay, so that's the point we're coming up to now.
And that applies, and for the rest of the halachot, it's for anyone or only for rabbis or gdolim?
But then on that, Rabbi Akiva also did it for Netilat Yadayim.
What do you mean for the Rabbanan?
Yeah.
For the Rabbanan, yeah. So that's the Rambam. Let's just get it clear. Every Jew, no rabbi, is you're obliged to give up your life for idolatry, immorality, and for spilling blood. That's unanimously. Now, even for mitzvah de Rabbanan, or even minhag Yisrael, okay, if it's a public display in front of 10 people, then it's also hayavor, because now you're desecrating in the name of Hashem. You see a Jew in public going back. What does public mean? 10 Jewish people. Doesn't matter how many.
For everyone.
For everyone. For everyone, if it's a public display. Now, so let's go back to the Kal V'chomer. Says the Maharsha. Maharsha asks this question, and he says, "I don't understand why are you trying to learn from frogs? What did the frogs do? They went into the fire, okay? But they were commanded to go into the fire by God. Mishael and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they weren't commanded to go into the fire. Daniel, where did Daniel go? Daniel wasn't in the fire. Daniel ran away. He said, I'm not getting involved. He ran. But they stayed. And they weren't commanded to go in. So what made them go to Kal V'chomer? Because the frogs, they were commanded to go in, and they were not commanded to go in. Second question is that there is an obligation and mitzvah of v'chai b'hem. What does it mean, v'chai b'hem? What's v'chai b'hem? What does it mean?
So, for example, pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat and so on.
Excellent. That is exactly the example. Pikuach nefesh is doche Shabbat. That means if you see a woman who's after childbirth, she needs a cup of tea, and you don't have anything to hot water. So what do? Big rabbi, you go outside, and you can do a sur doraita, chopping wood, lighting fire, heating up the water, bishur, cooking it, and give it just to save the life of pikuach nefesh. Why? Because b'chai ben. You do every avira in the Torah. You you machalel Shabbat in order to let another Jew even suffect to survive to live, because the mitzvah of b'chai ben.
Please, sorry, Rabbi. You said to make a cup of. You said to make a cup of tea. Did you say for a woman who's after giving birth?
Yeah, because a yoledet, 30 days after her childbirth, she has a din of chole sheyesh bo sakana.
Which means?
Which is halachic, thank you for asking, halachic terminology for somebody who's a sick person whose life is in danger, that we do.
So she's considered sick.
Shabbat.
She's considered sick.
Yeah, but there's different levels of sick. The sick,
it's like a material risk, essentially.
Which is there's a sick, which is some person who's sick, which a normal person is sick normally and gets better, and you're allowed to do Isur D'Rabanan on Shabbat. But a sick, which is life endangering.
Yeah. So even if she's not going to die, if she doesn't have a cup of tea.
Yes.
You can make a cup of tea.
Oh, so I'll give that example. We're not actually studying on Shabbat now, but I'm going to answer your question. I was talking about a yoledet when she feels after childbirth, she feels very weak, and maybe it's cold and she needs it. Then for her would be a safek pikuach nefesh to risk her life, and then you can do it. And then you can do chilul Shabbat. Now the point I've mentioned that is just to say that there's a mitzvah of v'chai bahen, that we're supposed to live to doing this mitzvah. You can't say, oh, it's Shabbat, and manage without your tea, and she's after birth, she's weak, she needs something hot, maybe it's cold weather, and then she ended up dying because you didn't want to do chilul Shabbat. Whenever there's a safek of pikuach nefesh, we're mechalel Shabbat because of mitzvah v'chai bahen. And a person just should know, whenever, if someone is fortunate enough to have a child, you have to realize that your wife, she put her life in danger for you to bring that child into the world. A woman gives birth, her life is at risk. Every woman, and the halachic definition of a woman for 30 days after childbirth is like chole sheyesh bo sakana, and we do chilul Shabbat. Even if that's the level that she needs a cup of tea, then we do that as well. Obviously, it's only when it's necessary and if there's no goy available, and but whenever there's risk, we do chilul Shabbat. Now back to our program. Mishael and Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah. They said, listen, we have a mitzvah of chai b'hem. We can't just die. We're young. We've got a lot of mitzvah to do. We've got shiurim to give. We've got chesed organizations running. We've got a lot of business in Kodesh to do in Torah. We can't just die now. We're not like frogs. Frogs, you die. Okay, we're going to miss out tomorrow. Yeah, do your mitzvah today. But Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, they have mitzvah to do every day. They can't just kill themselves. You're not allowed to do that. So where does this come, this Kal V'chomer? This our question is asked by the Maharsha on the Gemara. Is the question clear to everyone?
Sorry, can you just maybe repeat and elaborate just a little bit, because I'm sorry I missed.
Okay, so I'm just going to recap for the benefit.
If it's
we mentioned the Gemara that the frogs, they went into the fire. The frogs, they were commanded to go into the houses of the Egyptians, and some of them went into the fire and killed themselves, suicidal. When the three Nevi'im, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were commanded to bow down to the idol of Nebuchadnezzar, he said, "I'll throw them into the fire." So they did a kal vachomer. They said, "Listen, if the frogs went in and that was the right thing to do, and they died al Kiddush Hashem, we'll do the same thing. Off we go," and they were saved. That's the Gemara. It says the Marsha question. Jewish people have a mitzvah of v'chai ben. We have to live. We have important things to do. We have tefillah every day. We've got mitzvah to fulfill. We have chesed. We have a life. V'chai ben. We're supposed to live with the mitzvah. Not supposed to die. The frogs have no lives. They can die. It's fine. They do their mitzvah and off they go. So how could they make a kal vachomer for themselves to the frogs? That's the first question. The second one, he asks even more so, v'chai ben. He says that the frogs was a public display of Kiddush Hashem. They were in public. However, the Mishael and Hananiah and Nazariah, it was a private event. He was just in his house. There's no Jews there. Where's Chilul Hashem? And there is a machloket. The Rambam says that even if you're private in Avodah Zarah, you have a mitzvah. But there's a different opinion in the Gemara, which we don't pass in halacha.
I thought Michelle, and I thought it was in public.
You thought it was in public. So I'm going to tell you this from the Marsha. Marsha says this. The leka b'Faraisia. Yeah. The b'Faraisia kuli amamod yarik ba'al yavo. It wasn't in public. There wasn't 10 Jewish people there. So maybe it wasn't a little bit of public, but not 10 Jewish people, and therefore doesn't have that category of being public. 1 second, please.
But maybe
Is that okay, Mayor?
maybe 10 would have found out. Wouldn't that be?
Afterwards, it could be. I don't know. I'm just quoting the Marsha. The Marshas are saying that this kal vachomer is a pircha because it's Fardaim, the frogs. They weren't commanded by v'chai b'hem, and Hananiah was commanded by v'chai b'hem, and they were in public. And Mishael, Hananiah, and Nazariah, they were not in public. They called betzina. So how did they make this kal vachomer between themselves? Okay, so I'm going to mention you the Tosfot. Tosfot says like this. Tosfot on the Gemara. We're going a little bit deeper, but stay with me. It's going to be worth it. Yeah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, like, everyone agrees. If it's public, even on a light mitzvah. Or the Rabbanan, we said, or some say even minhag, if it's in public. Says Rabbi Netanel, this image of Nebuchadnezzar, he said it wasn't even an avodah zarah. It was an andarta. What does andarta mean? What's a
memorial? Memorial.
Thank you. It wasn't a memorial, but it was a tribute to himself. Andarta shasel lichvod atzmo. He made the image of himself for his own glory. And it wasn't really avodah zarah. I just said, bow down to my kavod. So he says, what did they see? They said, we said, we're not going to bow down to your God. 1 second, let me get this right. And says, oh, this is another question. Says, if it was really an avodah zarah, so then they would have to bow down. So this was the second question. Okay, I'm going to just quick out. First question was why they're not commanded by v'chai b'hem. That was the first question. Second question was that if it's really an avodah zarah, it doesn't matter if it was in public or if it was private. You're not allowed to bow down. And if you're not allowed to bow down, you don't need to learn any kal vachomer from frogs because you're not allowed to. You have to give up your life. So what do you mean? Oh, we learn from the frogs that we have to give up your life. What do you mean? You have to give up your life because you're not allowed to bow down to idolatry. That's the Rambam. That's halacha. You have to give up. So on that says Tosfot, this is the answer, that it wasn't really an idolatry. It was something which was just an andarta. It was for his kavod. And because it's only for his kavod, It wasn't, they really didn't have to give up their life. And he said they could have just run away. That's what Daniel did, he ran away. But what did they learn from the frogs? And this is what this is the lesson. It says that they learned from the frogs because they could have chosen. If you're a frog, where would you go? They said, I got two options. You have to go into the house. So you can either go into the kitchen, okay, or go into the bathroom. Bathroom, there's water, it's nice, it's cool, you play there, you know. The Egyptian comes into the house, he goes to the bathroom, he sees a frog, screams, runs out, you're done Kiddush Hashem, you're done your fulfilled job, you're enjoying in the bathroom. Why'd you have to go to the kitchen where it's hot, into the oven? You have to burn yourself, keep yourself alive. Why'd you have to do that? So it says, this is from the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Tzvi. He says he learns it from the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim says that they could have chosen where to go. They didn't have to go into the ovens. And they decided that we're going to do Kiddush Hashem. We've got opportunity. We can go here or not go there. We do Kal V'chomer, we're going to go and kill ourselves for Kiddush Hashem. And that says, Valkenim Letu, they got saved, because the Pasuk says later, this is what I was looking for, they all got killed. All the ones that went into the house and into the fields, they all died. Those which went into ovens did not get killed, which means they got burnt, but then they came back to life. And God saved them. And that's what Mishael and Azariah and Hananiah said, we've got opportunity now here. We could run away, they're like Daniel, but let's look at the frogs. The frogs used this opportunity for doing Hashem. And we're going to go in as well. Even though we don't have to. Maybe it's just an andarta, maybe it's not even in public, it's not even b'farisa, but we're going to do that Kiddush Hashem. And as a result of that Kiddush Hashem, they were given their life back, and they're recorded in history. And we're speaking about them now for the past half an hour. That is the lesson of Kiddush Hashem. Now I'm just going to quote you of the Rambam. The Rambam says, what is this mitzvah? It's specifically amongst Bnei Israel, which I'm sanctified. That's what Kiddush Hashem is. It's in front of 10 Jewish men that is called publicly because that's the mitzvah to publicize the faith, the emunah that we have. This is the truth. We're not scared of anything. We're not scared of being damaged or anyone hurting us. We're not scared of anything. If this is what we need to do, we're going to do that. That's Kiddush Hashem. And even if somebody comes against us and forces us to do something, we're not going to listen to him. We're going to give up our lives and we're going to die for it. That's the Kiddush Hashem. And we're not going to think either ways. And there's the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem that you see a Jew whose belief in his faith is strong. It says Rambam, Zoti mitzvat Kiddush Hashem, hamitzvim b'bnei Yisrael, b'chlalam. Everyone is commanded this. רוצה לומר מסירת נפשנו למות ביד האנוס על אהבת השם. Because of Allah for Hashem. This is what we say also in Shema Yisrael. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך. That even if you have to give up your life, this is what we do with Shema Yisrael, like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah did in the time of Nebuchadnezzar the Rasha. Says the Rambam. When he said, "L'shtachavot latzelem v'yishtachavu kol amim," everyone bowed down. B'Yisrael bichlal, they also bowed down. No one did Kiddush Hashem Shamayim. It could be that the Jews bowed down because they heard like Tosfot. It wasn't really Avodah Zarah, it was just an andarta. But they said, no, we're not bowing down. What is this shtiyot? And he says, Vayera ze cherpa gdola Yisrael. It was an embarrassment to Am Yisrael that everyone was scared of Nebuchadnezzar. Oh, you have to do it. You have to do it. You have to. Everyone was scared. What are you scared of? You don't have to be afraid of anything, only from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when they came along and said, we're not scared, that was the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. And everyone saw that. מעמד הגדול ההוא שפחד ממנו העולם. העולם כולו, everyone was scared, והיה בו ראוי שיפרסם הייחוד ויתגלה ברבים בעיתיים. And that's why they merited their great miracle, that even in their fire they came out alive. And that's what every Jew needs to remember. I would like to ask you two questions. Now that we've said that this Rambam and history and we've explained them, imagine yourself, if you're a frog. You're a frog now in Mitzrayim. What would you do? Where would you go? You can choose. What would you do? Don't have to answer that question. Just think to yourself. And what happened to those frogs? The frogs who chose to relax, where did they end up? They ended up dying. The frogs who ended up doing the Kiddush Hashem, they're the ones who lived. And because of that, there was great merits. Now, that's the first question. Dying al Kiddush Hashem, which every Jew is expected to do. But what about, we don't have that opportunity. So it doesn't mean it, I'm not a frog and I'm not asked to go into the Mitzrayim. So why, Rabbi, you ask me that question? That's what you're thinking? You with me? Anybody? Yeah. We're not commanded to do that now. But there's a important why I'm asking you. I'd like to ask you another question. The Gemara says, which means if someone deserves reward, he will be given reward. Even if it's a frog, he will get his reward. So kal v'chomer that a man who does risk his life for Kiddush Hashem, he will get rewarded. So there's another pasuk later on in the parasha. It says, "L'chol bnei Yisrael lo yicharatz kelev leshono." It's actually next week's parasha, but I couldn't wait till next week to tell you this. I just out of my time, and I'm going to do it this week, and it's connected to the frogs. Okay. L'chol bnei Yisrael lo yicharatz kelev leshono, which means when Am Yisrael left Mitzrayim, the dogs didn't bark. Because the dogs did not bark. They didn't bark at Bnei Israel. It says Rashi in Parashat Mishpatim. When we talk about nevela, what's a nevela? Nevela is an animal which hasn't been slaughtered halachically correct. And it's not kosher to eat. What does the pasuk say?
Give it to the dog.
Give it to the dog. לכלב תשליכון אותו. Okay, says the Rashi, you have to give it to the dog. Af hagoy kekelev. Now you don't have to give it to the dog. According to Machloket, some Rishonim say you do have a mitzvah to give it to the dog. Tosfot said you should give it specifically to the dog. The Chinuch says it's actually one of the mitzvot to give nevela to the dog. And Rashi says you don't have to give it to the dog. You can also give it to a goy. Maybe he's comparing a goy to the dogs. I don't know what he's saying, but he says you're allowed to give it to him. Any hana, you're allowed. Says Rashi, why does it say give it to the dog? To teach you a lesson. He gives reward respectfully to where it's due. They didn't bark, so they get reward. Give him his reward, give him their leftover meat. Or the meat which is treif and you can't eat it, leftovers. Don't put it in the bin, give it to the dog. Are you ready for my question? Okay. Well, the whole shit tonight is basically just for the introduction for this question. Where is the justice? What would you rather be, a dog or a frog? We saw the big Kiddush Hashem of the frogs. Right? That Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, they went into a fire. They killed themselves. They went into the fire. The dogs, they just kept quiet. Now, where is this discrepancy? Look at the reward. What happens to the reward? The frogs, they say, you risk your life. You did Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem. Rambam says, the greatest thing is Kiddush Hashem. We'll give you back to life. You live. How long does a frog live for? Lifespan of a frog, I don't know, maybe a couple of months, maybe a couple of years. And then you die. That's it. You're dead. A dog, it keeps quiet for a few minutes. And then for generations, for whole history, all of time, there's a mitzvah according to some Rishonim. Where was the discrepancy? What is this? It's like the favoritism to the dogs over here. It says, what about the poor frogs? Why is it? It's a one-time mitzvah, and the dogs for generations they get it. Who can explain that to me?
I know the answer already. So
I don't know. No, B'chavod. B'chavod. Wait, hey, Joe first. Joe's got something to say.
I just I missed the last.
Oh, you missed. Okay, so Gilad, B'chavod. You missed. It was a great question.
Right, it's just that it's harder to keep your mouth closed than throwing yourself to the Kishanesh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To keep your mouth shut is more difficult than to throw yourself into the fires. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? So let me explain a few things. What was difficult about the frogs? Why is it so difficult to keep your mouth shut? What about to the frogs? The Rashbam says, when the dogs kept quiet, what was so great about it? Why did they get a reward for that?
Because they used to bark when they see Malach HaMavet.
Oh, it's a very good. It says, Malach HaMazik u'mashchit. He was going around killing all the firstborns of Mitzrayim, of Bechor Yisrael, but he didn't. That means the Am Yisrael were walking around freely and nothing was touching them. And says the minhag of the dogs, they used to bark at chatzot. When it comes to midnight, that's when they bark. And in the night, they cry out. And says when a Malach HaMavet comes to the city, that's why the dogs start crying out. And he says in Mitzrayim, "En bayit she'en shamet." There's not one house which doesn't have a dead body there.
Although the counter argument would be, although we should say that it's an evil malach, so it's not exactly the same thing, right?
Malach HaMavet, the Malach HaMavet. So Hashem was decided which one was dog, which one was a Jew, which one was not Jew. But definitely there was the death going around. That was the angel of death taking the lives of them. And that's the Gemara says the Malach HaMavet was there, and the dogs should be crying out, and they actually were crying out. Nevertheless, when they see people, they didn't cry out. It says Rabbeinu Bachai. I said, there's something special about a dog. What's a dog? In Makat Bechorot, he says it's a very physical being. Chaya Gashmit, a kelev. And this is something which is a little bit deep. Lo yishba le'olam. Will never be satiated. Lo yida seva. He's never satisfied. Always wants more. Have. He's like a dog. That's how you compare somebody to a greedy person. Like a greedy dog. He just goes for his ta'avot all the time. And the kelef tashlichun oto, here he gets reward. What's his reward here? Because lo yichrat kelef leshono. He said there was a time of midat hadin. That's when the dogs should have been barking. So if it's their nature to bark, and they're supposed to bark when it's at night time, and it's late in the night, and it's Malach HaMavet, there's death there. So here it's a big miracle. At that time, the dogs go against their nature, and they don't bark. But it doesn't say they didn't bark. It says L'chol bnei Yisrael lo yichrat kelev leshono, which means they specifically didn't bark to the Jewish people. Go back to the Egyptians. Yeah, they were barking the whole time to the Egyptians. But when it comes to the Jews, they weren't barking at the Jews. And that was the miracle. You saw clearly the miracles of God. The dogs, how do they know who's Egyptian and who's not Egyptian? Who's a Jewish? When it comes to the Egyptian, the dog was barking. When it comes to the Jews, they stop. That is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Even with the dogs, you differentiated between the Jews and others. And so there's two things here. That number one, that the frogs went against their nature, but also the dogs went against their nature. But the frogs, there was one time going against their nature. What does that mean? In order to risk your life one time, okay, so you get the strength. You say, listen, let's got to do the right thing. We're doing the right thing. We're going to go. We're going to die. L'shem shamayim. We'll do Kiddush Hashem. Okay. You'll get rewarded for that. You'll be saved, maybe. Go back to life. But it's not for generations. Because it's a one-time event. But to not bark, it's every second you have to overcome that nature. I really want to say something. No. I really want to bark. No. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. That is the power which is longer. That's continuous. That is continuous, then the reward is going to be continuous. That's Ena Kadosh Baruch Hu mekapech schar kol beria. The frogs, okay, it's a one-time decision. People risk their life. Then this is a difference between dying al Kiddush Hashem and living according to Kiddush Hashem. When you're dying in Kiddush Hashem, it's one time. You give up your life, you say Shema Yisrael, and that's it. But when it's Nisayon and the difficulty is continuous, and every time you have to muster the strength to hold back your nature and go against your nature and to stop your mouth, that's continuous. Then the reward is going to be continuous. That's Lefum Tzara Agra. And so, we're now in a generation that we're in the generation of Mashiach. That's where we are in the generation now. And we're told that it's just Avat Israel and Avat Chinam, and not to speak Lashon Hara about each other. The Chafetz Chaim says this is what is going to be the generation. We need to remember that, Lashon Hara. And it's not to speak. Okay, and it could be one time you say, okay, I'll hold myself back, and then you slip, or you open your mouth. Hashem's put us on this, there's the virus around the world. And if you think that it's just happened by chance, and it's just the mikre, and you kofir, and someone ate a bat in China, and because of that, everyone, no. It's Hashem made this for a reason, and He's teaching us something. And we're all made to put masks on our face and to cover our mouths. And that's the message for us. We're supposed to cover our mouths. Just to hold back. A dog, you chain his mouth, but a Jew, you don't need to chain his mouth. You know the way to hold back. This is a commandment every Jew is provided to do. And you don't have to be tested of Kiddush Hashem to die for Kiddush Hashem. You can live. If somebody sees you as a Jew and you feel like you want to get angry and shout and you hold back, that's Kiddush Hashem. People see that. Look how he's controlling. He's just been embarrassed publicly. Shouted at. Does he respond? No. He has an emunah. He believes it's min hashamayim. He believes it's for the right thing. Okay, he shows his mouth. Does he speak Lashon Hara about it? He holds himself back. That is the strength that we should master. And we realize, even though it's difficult to continue it, but the more we continue, the more reward is going to be. And that's the power of living al Kiddush Hashem. That's the power of the rewards of the dogs more than the reward of the frogs.
Can I ask, Rabbi? Sorry.
That's it for the parasha. Now, please, questions.
Does this? I mean,
some stories.
I've got a story. It happened today.
Oh, please.
I was doing a job, and I had someone working for me, and he messed up. Messed up on the job, and it cost me. And it cost me, I say big, I wouldn't say thousands, I wouldn't say hundreds, a few hundred. And I yelled at him. And I shouted at him.
Well, he deserves it, isn't he? He messed up.
Yeah. I'm not proud. I'm not proud.
Was he Jewish?
He wasn't Jewish.
Not Jewish.
Which is one of the questions. And look, I consider myself, I try my very best not to be that person. But I was that person, unfortunately. I had to. I was fuming. And and what's my shout in front of someone else, another non-Jew? I'm not proud. But I don't know. I had to teach him a lesson, or just I wouldn't say punish him, just to let him know what he's done. Just that's what I had to do. So my question was what I did wrong, and if so, how wrong?
Well, it's not like you're still upset about it.
Very.
Yeah.
Because it was only today.
It sounds like it. So maybe think about it. How about, what was the purpose of what he did? You still need to tell him that he's done something wrong, and he has to realize it. Maybe think about how you do it next time if you weren't being angry. Let's say if you're like on the level of a Chafetz Chaim, I don't know if what's expected us all the time. But let's say the Chafetz Chaim, we're supposed to believe as a Jew that anything which we lose is from God that takes away. Obviously, what we're deserving, we get. What we're not deserving, we don't get.
Yeah.
But a person also got responsibility of his workers. If he's done mistakes, he needs to be corrected. Right? This doesn't mean just let him go and make him do mistakes and let him steal you and be him gun of you. You don't have to be what can I say in English? A fire. Don't let him just tread all over you and just take all your stuff. And no, you can put him straight. But that's a different level. But here, I'm not even talking about part of the shiur was not really to get angry. That's a different topic. But But to stop
But
saying
it's
things
going.
when you're not
Sorry,
saying them.
it was what
Restraints.
going against your nature. I get human nature.
Holding
is
back
to
from your nature, even
react.
restraints, even not reacting. Even the main thing is talking about lashon hara, about Jewish people, talking about badness. Why do you have to talk about them? Somebody asks you, what was the story with him? He said, listen, I don't want to talk about it. It's lashon hara. And maybe you really want to talk about it because it's an interesting story and maybe it makes you. But listen, if it's about other Jews, doesn't make them look good. Then we try to have the achizah can remember to hold back, and it's worth it. It's worth it. Listen, if you would have been calmed down, or then maybe you would have done a Kiddush Hashem. But the main Kiddush Hashem was with Jewish people, in front of Jewish people. You see?
Right.
Okay. Thank you for that question. So we have time for a quick story. What should we do? Should we do Rav Zusha or Rav Sali? We'll do one of each. Okay. So Rav Zusha Me'anipolis tonight is I'll tell you the stories which I know about him, and it's good to remember. He had a very poor, difficult life for Rav Zusha Me'anipoli. He was living on his own, and he lived very poorly, very deserted, and all his life he was like suffering. Somebody went to, I think it was with the Maggid Mezrich, and he said, listen, how can I be happy and say thanks to God if I have so many difficulties in life? So he said, listen, go ask Rav Zusha. He's a tzaddik, he's always happy. And look at him, he's got no money, or he's got a family, he's a difficult life. Ask him how he does it. He said, okay, that's a good idea. He went to Rav Zusha and he said, listen, tell me, how can I be happy if I have so many difficulties in life? And Rav Zusha answered him in one great line. He said, how should I know? I never had a bad day in my life. And how could he say that? How could he say that? Because he's tzaddik, he looks at everything in good. He says, Hashem's only does good to me the whole time. Whatever bad things happen, it's goodness to see the good. Even maybe also maybe in this parasha, when Moshe Rabbeinu says, Lama areta la'am hazeh? Why you made it more difficult? You sent me to free the Bnei Israel, and as soon as I come, it becomes more difficult. And Moshe gets punished for that. Now, why is that? Because when Hashem made it more difficult for Am Yisrael, the slavery, that was good. Where's the goodness in that? How is making slavery more difficult? How is that goodness?
It means that it will end up earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it bringing the Geulah quicker, is bringing it sooner. So a person is suffering is calculated. So you lost money, you lost sleep, you lost health, but it's calculated. What you lose now, you'll gain later. And Hashem does it for chesed. So if you look at that in the right mindset, you have the freedom to be happy. Should we do one more story? Maybe we'll do Baba Sali. Baba Sali, Rabbi Yisrael Abuchatzera, was Chassid Parish Kadisha. Miracles have told about him, even in my family, and even
the miracles of what? Sorry,
of Baba Sali. Rabbi Yisrael Abuchatzera, Zchutei again, and who was Motzei Shabbat Izizivullah. Always falls in the Shavua of Parashat Bo. One thing you have to know that he used to do miracles, and he's very famous for his miracles. Maybe we mentioned just maybe one or two miracles that they used to do. But what was the power behind his miracles? You have to realize that he wasn't like a magician or a sorcerer. He was a tzaddik. He was devoted to the Torah, but he was like a malach. They said about him that he's great in Torah knowledge. Even from a young age, he was already made a dayan at the age of like 16. When we were playing football, he's already sitting on a bet adin, and he's a dayan and Rosh Yeshiva, and full of Torah, but already writing books, very advanced. And the whole time he was thinking about Kadosh Baruch Hu. And it's through the power of the Torah that he was able to do the miracles. But he always had a great love for Am Yisrael. He used to cry when somebody used to come to him for a problem. He used to feel like it's his personal problem. He used to cry with him. And he had tremendous mesirut nefesh for a mitzvah. So I give one example, was for Kiddush Levana. There's a mitzvah once a month, we can make a birkat levana. And there's one time he was in France, and it was cloudy. He said there's no way to do Birkat Levana. So he's waited one night, and next night, third night, and it's cloudy. It's like winter months, and sometimes you don't see Levana. Sometimes in London you can miss it. Go 2 or 3 months, you don't do Kiddush Levana because you don't see it. And he was very upset. He was a betzar. This is a mitzvah de Rabbanan. He said, what am I going to do? I have to do Kiddush Levana to make a bracha for Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the Levana does its job and it shines. He says, listen, if you want, go down to southern France. Southern France there, Côte d'Azur, it's nice, it's sunny, it's blue, sea, it's sky, it's clear sky. You can do a bracha there. So he said, okay, arrange for me the journey. And he arranged for him for the journey, and he said that nowadays you can do it in a couple of hours, but then it was a 9-10 hour journey for him. And he made that journey just to make that one bracha. And I'm saying, you see that Mesirut Nefesh for mitzvah, that for him he does miracles. They've said about another time for Baba Sali, that was a less famous story. The more famous story of him is that when it was cloudy, he just looked at the clouds and with his hands just made them move. Now, how can you do that? You can stand there for hours and not make anything move, yeah? But how did he do that? What was his power? Because he did Mesirut Nefesh for his mitzvah. This I heard from Ron Blickstein. He's one of the descendants from the family of Abu Chatzera. He said this story. He said he wasn't just a miracle worker. He used to go out of his way to do a mitzvah. I'll tell another story. He always used to go for Netilat Yadayim. There was a halacha that before you do tefillah, before you come to pray, you wash your hands. Every synagogue, you see, before you come into the synagogue, there's a sink. Doesn't matter if there's a bathroom, there's a toilet, there's a kitchen, there's always a sink. Why? So people think it's a sink for the Kohanim to wash their hands. It's not only for Kohanim. Every time before you go to pray, you wash your hands. The Rambam says, like Shulchan Aruch is brought down, Ben Ish Chai brings it down. You wash your hands in preparation for prayer. You don't just come from your shopping or from picking up your kids or going to work and then go to pray to God. You go to synagogue, you wash your hands before you come in, ready for the service of God. And he used to be very careful. Wherever he used to travel, always used to take with him his tefillin, 3 things. His tefillin, a jerry can of water for Netilat Yadayim, and the third thing, I can't remember, maybe it was his Siddur or his Sefer, his book, which he used to study. I think that was the 3 things. And one time he's told us he had a driver. Tell him, this is I heard from one of the family in Netivot, family Marziano. I think we mentioned it in the shiur before as well, the story. He told him go on a journey. He used to go all the way to journey to all different places to pray, do special tefillot, because the place where you pray does a tikkun also for the place. And I don't know how he used to know where to go. Kivrei Tzadikim and different places. So he told his driver, go, take me to this place. Now, he's driving on the motorway and it says, Rabbi, it's time for Shkia. It's almost going to be Shkia. We need to pray Mincha. Let's stop for Mincha. He says, no, not yet. Go. Keep driving. So they're driving and there's roads in Israel. I don't know if you've been there, but even middle of nowhere, you don't see anything. You're like in between cliffs, there's just trees and you're like on your own. And he says also, it's almost going to be Shkia. And it's not like minyan or a house or houses. We're going to pray. He says, I'll tell you where to stop. He told him to stop literally in the middle of a forest, in the middle of nowhere, but just off the highway, off the road. And he says, okay, now bring me my siddur, my tefillin, my netilat yadayim. Now the driver, he forgot to bring the jerry can of water. Okay, that was the first time he messed up. And I heard this from the family of the driver. And he said he was embarrassed. He said, I don't know what to do. He was like crying and he said, I'm sorry, Rabbi, there's no water. We didn't bring. It's okay, you didn't bring? You know, Baba Sali, I never missed Netilat Yadayim in my life. Now go mincha, I need to pray. You didn't bring my water. You know, he didn't shout at him. He didn't say you messed up. He said, okay, Min HaShamayim, you didn't bring it, Min HaShamayim. And this is a Kiddush Hashem, you see Baba Sali, what he does. And because of this, he did that, we're telling this story tonight. He said, never mind. Baruch Hashem, Siyata Dishma. He said, look over there. There's a few rocks. Move the rocks. Behind the rocks, there's a spring. So, no, people don't know about it. Have a look. Okay, so there's two big men, the driver, there's someone else there. They move the rock. They move the rock, and there's like a tiny, how do you put it? A spring of water. Water came out, a natural spring. Now they were amazed. Like, you don't see it. How did Baba Sali see that? Anyway, he did his Netilat Yadayim, and then he went by a tree and he did his mincha. He did his mincha, he was praying. While he was praying, so the driver said, listen, this is unbelievable. We've got to remember this spring. He said, let's take all the rocks and make a pile. Make a pile over here, so then when we come back on the road, we'll see the pile of rocks. So they took every little stone that they could do and make a nice big pile of stones. Okay, Baba Sali finished his tefillah, went back into the car, and then they drove. He said they drove, and they took him off. It says a couple of days later, a few weeks later. So the driver, he said, I'm going to go back to the spring. He went back to that road through the forest, waited to see his pile of stones, and wanted to make a better mark over there. He moves the stones, all dry, no spring. Dirt, nothing. There's no water there. There never was water there. It was a one-time, obviously, miracle for Baba Sali. How did he do that? But it's the same thing. He says, Baba Sali made sure that he would never miss it. If you make sure that you never miss it, then Hashem will help you even when you're stuck. And the same story also told about the Baal Shem Tov. He says a similar story with his Hasidim. Baal Shem Tov, similar story. He didn't have water, he made oil, and the water came out. And the greatness of the story is you see that the tzaddikim, even when it gets difficult, they make sure they do Netilat Yadayim. They don't give up. He was willing to travel a couple of hours just to do Birkat HaLevana. Now we live in London, there's no Birkat HaLevana, Patur, let's go to sleep. We don't think twice about it. We miss so many times. But the tzaddik never misses. This is a chizuk that we should be stuck with the mitzvot. So I hope you enjoyed the shiur tonight, take lessons from it, that we have an opportunity to live according to Kiddush Hashem, not just to die according to Hashem. And the reward that Hashem makes for every single effort, and every effort is calculated. And sometimes if we suffer, it's for the goodness, for our own good. And Hashem's saving us from later even more suffering. And I should remember to follow in the ways of the mitzvot and the ways of Hashem and live by the way of Kiddush Hashem. That way, B'ezrat Hashem will bring the Geula closer, and we'll have goodness and reward for us and for all of Israel. If you enjoyed the shiur, wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you,
very
Rabbi.
much.
Hazak Baruch.
Thank you. Good night.
Very fulfilling.
Thank you, Joe.